Disrespect is not an accident. It is a diagnostic measurement. When someone interrupts you, when they dismiss your vision, or when they treat your presence as a secondary thought, they are conducting a psychological audit. They are testing the boundaries of your sovereignty to see how much of your territory they can occupy before you push back. Most men react to this with heat. They get angry, they stutter, or worse, they try to explain themselves. They plead for the respect they should have already commanded. This is the mark of the subordinate. In the corridors of power, anger is a confession of weakness, and explanation is a surrender of status. You are here because you are tired of being the ghost in the room. You are tired of being predictable. Predictability is the scent of prey, and in a world of predators, it is an invitation to be devoured. But today, the hierarchy shifts. We are not here to discuss how to be liked. We are here to discuss how to be untouchable. Thomas Shelby did not rise from the mud of France and the soot of Birmingham by being pleasant. He rose by mastering the architecture of the human mind. He turned disrespect into a trap and silence into a sentence of psychological submission. What Thomas Shelby executed in the smoke-filled rooms of the 20th century, Niccolò Machiavelli codified in the courts of the 16th. These are not merely lessons, they are the ancient laws of the prince, reimagined for the modern strategist. By the time this transmission concludes, you will no longer seek respect. You will engineer it. You will stop being the victim of their ego and become the cold architect of their regret. If you have chosen the path of the sovereign over the comfort of the crowd, prove your intent. Comment, "I am sovereign" below. Subscribe to join the collective of the 1% who understand that power is never given, it is only taken. Welcome to the Shelby Company Limited. The first step in the reclamation of your status is the mastery of the law of strategic silence. In the social hierarchy, the man who speaks the most is often the man with the least to say. He is the one leaking information, seeking validation, and showing his hand. To make someone regret disrespecting you, you must first become a vacuum. You must become an enigma that they cannot solve. Silence is not just the absence of noise. It is a weaponized presence that forces the opponent to confront their own inadequacy. Consider the moment Thomas Shelby first encounters Inspector Campbell in a secluded office. Campbell arrives with the full weight of the crown, the police force, and a misplaced sense of moral superiority. He is loud, he is threatening, and he fills the room with his self-importance. He paces, he barks orders, and he tries to intimidate Tommy with the specter of the law. He is waiting for a reaction. He is waiting for Tommy to plead, to lie, or to show fear. Instead, he finds a man who has mastered the art of being a stone. Tommy sits perfectly still. He does not interrupt. He does not defend his character. He pours a cup of tea with the precision of a surgeon, his eyes never leaving the steam rising from the porcelain. He allows Campbell to exhaust his bravado until the room is heavy with the inspector's own desperation to be acknowledged. By the time Tommy speaks, his few words carry the weight of a mountain because they were preceded by a silence that devalued everything Campbell had said. This is the internal psychology of the survivor. To Thomas Shelby, the war in the tunnels of France taught him that noise is death. In the social zadres of Birmingham, he applies this survival instinct to every conversation. He understands that every word you utter is a piece of yourself that you give away. When you are disrespected, your natural impulse is to fill the air with a defense. You want to tell them why they are wrong. You want to prove your worth, but the moment you start explaining, you have already lost. You have accepted the role of the defendant. Thomas Shelby never plays the defendant. He remains the judge. He uses silence to create a mirror. When you remain quiet in the face of an insult, The person who insulted you is forced to sit with their own words. They begin to wonder if they went too far. They begin to fear your lack of reaction. That fear is the beginning of their regret. Niccolò Machiavelli, in his timeless treatise The Prince, understood this better than anyone. He argued that a prince must never be found lacking in reasons to break a promise, but more importantly, he must never be easily read. Machiavelli taught that the sovereign must be a fox to recognize the traps and a lion to frighten the wolves. Strategic silence is the fox's greatest tool. If your enemies and your peers do not know what you are thinking, they cannot build a strategy against you. A man who explains his actions is a man who is subordinate to the opinions of others. Machiavelli observed that the masses are always taken by appearances and by the outcome of an event. By remaining silent, you control the appearance of your power. You appear as a man who is so secure in his position that the petty disrespect of others does not even register on his radar. You become a black hole of information. You take everything in, and you give nothing back until the moment is right for a calculated strike. The contrast between the common man and the man of power is never more evident than in the face of a social slight. The common man is a creature of reaction. He is like a bell that rings every time it is struck. If you insult him, he gets angry. If you praise him, he smiles. He is entirely predictable, and therefore he is easily controlled. The common man believes that by standing up for himself with loud words, he is showing strength. In reality, he is showing that he is easily bothered. He is showing that his internal state is dependent on the external world. The man of power, the Shelby, is the architect of his own internal environment. He treats disrespect as a fly on a window pane. It is a minor nuisance that does not require a change in course. He knows that his silence is far more terrifying than a shout. A shout can be ignored. A cold, unwavering stare accompanied by absolute silence demands an answer that the disrespecter is usually not prepared to give. In your modern life, whether it is in the boardroom, the social circle, or your personal relationships, you must implement the 5-second rule of sovereignty. When someone attempts to undermine you or speak over you, do not rush to reclaim the floor. Stop. Look them directly in the eyes, not with anger, but with a detached curiosity, as if you are observing a strange specimen. Let 5 seconds of silence pass. It will feel like an eternity to them. In those 5 seconds, the power dynamic shifts. You are demonstrating that you are not moved. You are demonstrating that you are in control of the tempo. This discomfort will rot their confidence from the inside out. They will likely try to fill the silence with an apology or a clarification, and in that moment, they have surrendered. You have made them regret their disrespect without saying a single word. This is not just a tactic. It is the fundamental law of the sovereign mind. Never explain. Never complain. Let your silence be the vacuum that swallows their ego. When the common man is disrespected, his pulse quickens. He feels the heat rise in his neck, a biological signal that his ego has been bruised. His immediate instinct is to bark, to throw a flurry of insults, to shout, or to engage in a petty exchange of words that ultimately lowers his status to the level of his aggressor. This is the fallacy of the half measure. To Thomas Shelby, aggression is not an emotional release, it is a surgical necessity. If you decide to move against someone who has dared to cross the line of your sovereignty, you do not slap their hand. You dismantle their world. This is the law of the calculated blow. It is the understanding that respect is often built on the ruins of those who thought they could defy you with impunity. To understand the sheer magnitude of this principle, we must look at the systematic destruction of Billy Kimber. Kimber was the king of the racecourses, a man surrounded by muscle, money, and the perceived protection of the law. He looked at Thomas Shelby and saw a small-time bookie from the slums of Small Heath, a man he could use, discard, or crush at his whim. Kimber's disrespect was overt. It was the arrogance of a man who believed his position was unassailable. Tommy did not respond with immediate violence. He didn't engage in a street brawl. Instead, he began a process of strategic infiltration. He studied Kimber's empire, identified the friction points, and began to pull the threads of Kimber's alliances. When the final confrontation occurred outside the garrison, it wasn't just a shootout. It was the final note in a symphony of destruction that had been playing for weeks. Tommy didn't just kill the man. He erased the institution. He stood in the rain, the smoke of his cigarette mixing with the Birmingham fog, and delivered a strike so absolute that it left no room for a successor to seek revenge. He hit so hard that the name Kimber became a footnote in the history of the Shelby Company Limited. The internal psychology of Thomas Shelby in these moments is one of absolute detachment. He views his opponents not as human beings with feelings, but as obstacles on a board. When he is disrespected, he does not feel hurt. He feels informed. He uses the disrespect as a justification for an escalation that he had likely already planned. While the opponent is laughing at a joke made at Tommy's expense, Tommy is already calculating the cost of the bullets, the loyalty of the men involved, and the post-war landscape of the territory he is about to seize. He understands that a man who hits and retreats only creates an enemy who is now more vigilant. A man who hits and stays, however, creates a legend. This is the Shelby strike. It is the refusal to engage in the back and forth of social conflict. You either endure with a cold silence, or you end the conflict permanently. There is no middle ground. Niccolò Machiavelli, the master of political survival, articulated this brutal reality in The Prince with chilling clarity. He wrote, "Upon this, it may be noted that men ought either to be well treated or crushed, because they can avenge themselves of lighter injuries. Of more serious ones they cannot. Therefore the injury that is to be done to a man ought to be of such a kind that one does not stand in fear of revenge." This is the philosophical backbone of the calculated blow. If you insult a man slightly, he will spend his nights plotting your downfall. If you take everything from him, he will spend his nights wondering how he will eat. Machiavelli understood that the nice guy who tries to be fair in his retaliation is actually being the most cruel to himself. By leaving his enemy with the means to strike back, he ensures a life of perpetual anxiety. To be a sovereign, you must accept the morality of the predator. You must understand that once the line of respect is crossed, the relationship is no longer about getting along. It is about establishing who is the lion and who is the carcass. The contrast between the man of the mass and the man of power is found in the duration of their anger. The common man is angry for a minute, a day, or a week. His anger is a flare, bright, hot, and quickly extinguished. Because his anger is emotional, it is ineffective. The man of power, the Shelby, replaces anger with a cold, perpetual objective. His regret for the offender is not delivered in a moment of passion. It is delivered as a cold dish months later, when the offender has forgotten the original slight. The common man barks to show he has teeth. The sovereign bites to show he has hunger. The common man wants an apology. The sovereign wants a surrender. When you are disrespected in the modern world, you must resist the urge to win the argument. The argument is irrelevant. The only thing that matters is the final outcome of the interaction. In your modern social zadrez, you apply the cost of aggression through the protocol of total withdrawal, or the professional execution. If a colleague or a so-called friend disrespects you, do not engage in the petty drama. Do not send a long text explaining why you are upset. That is a half measure. Instead, you withdraw your value entirely and immediately. You become a ghost. If you were the one providing insights, connections, or emotional support, you cut the supply without warning. You let them feel the freezing cold of your absence. If the disrespect happens in a professional setting, you do not complain to HR like a victim. You wait. You identify a project or a metric that they rely on, and you quietly ensure that your contribution is redirected or neutralized in a way that makes their failure inevitable. You don't do this with a smile or a sneer. You do it with the same cold professionalism that Tommy used to manage his ledgers. When they eventually realize that their life has become harder since they crossed you, they will feel the weight of their mistake. They won't just regret the insult. They will fear the silent power of the man they thought they could belittle. The second pillar of your transformation is the mastery of the frame. In every interaction, there is an invisible structure, a set of rules, assumptions, and power dynamics that dictate who is the leader and who is the follower. This is the frame. Most men walk into a room and unconsciously adopt the frame of the person with the most perceived authority. They adjust their posture, they soften their voice, and they look for social cues on how to behave. They are playing on someone else's home turf. To make them regret disrespecting you, you must learn to walk into their office, their home, or their social circle, and force them to live in your reality. You do not ask for a seat at the table. You behave as if the table was built for your convenience. There is perhaps no greater example of frame control than the legendary negotiation between Thomas Shelby and Alfie Solomons in the depths of Alfie's rum distillery. Tommy is on Alfie's territory. He is surrounded by Alfie's men in a room that smells of yeast and violence. Alfie is a chaotic force, a man who uses erratic behavior and loud poetic threats to keep his opponents off balance. He tries to dominate Tommy with his presence, his size, and his unpredictability. He mocks Tommy, he tests him, and he attempts to frame Tommy as a mere peeking boy. But Tommy does not enter Alfie's frame. He sits still, his overcoat still on, creating a pocket of Birmingham cold in the middle of the distillery. He introduces a grenade into the conversation, not a physical one, but a logical one. He informs Alfie that he has rigged a bomb to go off, and that his death would trigger a chain reaction that would destroy everything Alfie has built. In that moment, the home turf advantage vanishes. The frame shifts from Tommy in Alfie's world to both men in a world governed by Tommy's rules of life and death. Tommy didn't win by being louder. He won by refusing to accept Alfie's reality. The psychology behind this is the indifference of the sovereign. Thomas Shelby is able to control the frame because he is genuinely willing to lose everything to maintain his dignity. Most people are terrified of social awkwardness, of losing a job, or of being disliked. This fear makes their frame weak and porous. Tommy's frame is made of iron because it is forged in the belief that he is already dead, that everything since the war is extra time. When you have nothing to lose, you cannot be intimidated. When you walk into a negotiation, your power is not in your words, but in your willingness to walk away and burn the bridge behind you. Disrespect is an attempt to pull you into a frame where you are lesser. By remaining unmoved, you signal that their opinion of you is so irrelevant that it doesn't even warrant a change in your breathing pattern. You are the mountain, and their disrespect is merely the wind. Machiavelli understood that the prince must always be the source of both necessity and benefit. He wrote that a wise prince must adopt a policy which will make his citizens always feel the need for the state, and for him in every circumstance. Then they will always be loyal to him. In the context of the social chessboard, frame control is about creating a reality where the other person feels the necessity of your presence. If you allow yourself to be disrespected, you are signaling that you are a commodity, something easily replaced and of low value. But if you control the frame, you position yourself as the benefit. You are the one with the vision, the one with the plan, the one who brings order to the chaos. Machiavelli observed that men are more prone to follow a leader who projects an image of absolute certainty, even if that certainty is a mask. By owning the frame, you are providing the mass with something they desperately crave, a direction. The common man seeks approval. The sovereign demands terms. The common man enters a room and asks, "Do they like me?" The man of power enters a room and asks, "Are these the people I want to deal with?" This subtle shift in focus changes everything. When you seek approval, you are giving the other person the power to grant or withhold it. This is an invitation for disrespect. Why would someone respect a man who is begging for their like? The sovereign, however, evaluates the room. If someone is disrespectful, the sovereign doesn't get offended. He simply notes that the person has failed the evaluation. He treats the offender as a faulty piece of equipment. This internal shift is what makes the Shelby presence so heavy. People can feel that you are judging them, rather than waiting to be judged by them. To apply this today, you must master the reframing technique. When someone insults you or tries to belittle your work in front of others, do not defend the work. That is playing in their frame. Instead, analyze their behavior out loud. If a colleague says, "Your report was a bit simplistic, don't you think?" a common man would start explaining the complexity of the data. A Shelby-style strategist would look at them, tilt his head slightly, and say, "You seem very invested in finding flaws today. Are you feeling pressured by your own deadlines? Or are you just struggling with the concept of efficiency?" You have shifted the frame from the quality of your work to the insecurity of their behavior. You have forced them to defend themselves in a reality you just created. You have made them the subject of the audit. This is how you make them regret the disrespect. Not by proving them wrong, but by making the cost of attacking you higher than they are willing to pay. You are the architect of the reality. They are just living in it. To command the social hierarchy, you must first master the geography of your own nervous system. Most men are slaves to their biology. When threatened, their heart rate spikes, their voice rises an octave, and their movements become erratic. They are leaking cortisol and desperation. This is the moment a predator knows the hunt is over. To make them regret disrespecting you, you must adopt the ICE protocol. You must understand that in the Zadrez of power, the man who reacts is the man who is controlled. The man who remains frozen, however, becomes an impenetrable fortress. Emotion is a luxury that a sovereign cannot afford during a conflict. Your calm is not a lack of feeling. It is a weaponized choice that strips the opponent of their most potent tool, the ability to provoke you. There is no more visceral demonstration of this than the moment Luca Changretta, the head of the Sicilian Black Hand, walks into Thomas Shelby's office. Luca is a man of immense theatrical power. He enters with the confidence of a conqueror, dressed in fine Italian wool, chewing on a matchstick, radiating the lethality of the American mafia. He places the Black Hand card on Tommy's desk, a literal death sentence. The air in the room is heavy with the threat of extinction. Luca is watching Tommy's eyes, looking for the flicker of fear, the twitch of the hand, the slight shift in posture that signals a man who knows he is outmatched. But Tommy does not give him the satisfaction. He doesn't stand up. He doesn't reach for a weapon. He continues to sit, his face a mask of absolute, terrifying indifference. He treats the arrival of a world-class assassin as if it were a routine business delivery. By refusing to react to the theater of Luca's threat, Tommy instantly devalues Luca's power. He forces the Sicilian to realize that his reputation and his threats have no currency in this office. Tommy's weaponized calm turns the predator into a frustrated guest, forcing Luca to speak first, to explain himself, and ultimately to lose the psychological edge. The internal psychology of the ICE protocol is rooted in the war of the amygdala. Thomas Shelby understands that disrespect is often a bait. The aggressor wants you to get angry because anger makes you stupid. Anger makes you narrow-minded. When you are calm, your field of vision is wide. You see the exits, the vulnerabilities, and the long-term consequences. Tommy views his own emotions as external data points. He acknowledges the threat, but he does not let it penetrate the core of his decision-making process. He knows that his lack of reaction is the ultimate insult. It communicates to the aggressor, "You are not significant enough to change my mood." This is the ultimate subversion of their ego. By remaining cold, you are telling the world that your internal sovereignty is absolute. You are not a bell that rings when struck. You are a deep well that swallows the stone without making a sound. Niccolò Machiavelli, in his analysis of the fox and the lion, emphasized the necessity of a steady hand and a concealed mind. He argued that a prince must be a fox to recognize the traps and a lion to frighten the wolves. However, the fox's greatest attribute is not its speed, but its composure. A fox that panics is a fox that is caught. Machiavelli taught that a leader must always project a sense of gravitas, a weightiness that suggests he is always in control of the situation, regardless of the chaos unfolding around him. In The Prince, he suggests that a leader who is easily moved by the insults or threats of others will quickly lose the respect of his subjects and the fear of his enemies. Stability is the foundation of authority. Machiavelli would view Tommy's encounter with Luca as a masterclass in sprezzatura, the art of making a difficult task look effortless. By appearing unmoved by a death threat, Tommy convinces Luca and the audience that he has a plan that Luca cannot yet see. The calm creates a vacuum of information that the opponent fills with their own fears. The contrast between the man of the mass and the man of power is found in their relationship with tension. The common man fears tension. He wants to resolve it as quickly as possible, usually by shouting or apologizing. He cannot handle the silence of a conflict. The man of power, the Shelby, breathes in tension. He uses it as a diagnostic tool. He knows that the longer he can maintain the ICE protocol, the more likely the other person is to make a mistake. The common man reacts to the heat of the moment. The strategist lowers the temperature until the opponent's gears seize up. When you are disrespected, the common path is to show them you're not to be trifled with through aggression. The sovereign path is to show them they are not important enough to warrant an emotional response. In your modern life, you apply the ICE protocol by mastering your physiological tells. When someone disrespects you in a meeting or a social setting, your first task is to lower your heart rate. Take a slow, invisible breath. Look at the person as if you are watching a movie in a language you don't quite speak. When you finally respond, do so with a deliberate reduction in speed. Speak 20% slower than usual. This temporal control signals to everyone in the room that you are the one setting the pace of the interaction. If they are shouting, you whisper. If they are leaning in aggressively, you lean back and create space. The more they try to provoke a reaction, the more bored you should appear. This is the ultimate way to make them regret their disrespect. They wanted a fight. You gave them a mirror. They wanted to feel powerful by affecting you. You made them feel small by proving they are irrelevant to your peace of mind. Your calm is the ice that cracks their ego. The fifth law in the architecture of regret is the most deceptive: the illusion of vulnerability. In the world of the common man, weakness is something to be hidden at all costs. He puffs out his chest, he brags about his accomplishments, and he tries to project an image of constant, unyielding strength. This makes him a target. It makes him predictable. To the strategist, however, a perceived weakness is the ultimate bait. By allowing your opponent to believe they have the upper hand, by letting them think you are vulnerable, distracted, or outmatched, you lure them into the trap of arrogance. And as Thomas Shelby knows, an arrogant enemy is an enemy who has already lost the war. You do not win by being the strongest. You win by being the one who is still standing when the smoke clears, because your opponent didn't see the real strike coming. We see this masterfully executed during Tommy's dealings with the Russian aristocrats and Grand Duchess Tatiana. To the Russians, Tommy is a peasant, with a bit of luck and a lot of dirt under his fingernails. They treat him with a refined, icy disrespect, viewing him as a mere tool for their counter-revolutionary plots. They believe they are the masters of the game, using Tommy to tunnel into their own vaults to retrieve their jewels. Tommy allows them to maintain this frame. He plays the role of the diligent worker, the man focused on the job, and the man who is seemingly captivated by the Duchess's manipulations. He lets them believe he is being used. He allows them to feel superior, to mock his origins, and to underestimate his intellect. But while they are busy being aristocrats, Tommy is mapping their weaknesses, identifying their betrayals, and ensuring that by the time the jewels are moved, he is the only one who truly controls the outcome. He wasn't their tool. He was the one who built the tunnel they were trapped in. The psychology of the illusion of vulnerability is built on the exploitation of the arrogance gap. When someone disrespects you, they are essentially signaling that they believe their status is higher than yours. This belief creates a psychological blind spot. Because they think you are lesser, they stop looking for threats from your direction. They become sloppy with their information. They reveal their true intentions, and they leave their flanks exposed. Thomas Shelby understands that there is immense power in being underestimated. While the common man is busy trying to prove how tough he is, the sovereign is busy gathering intelligence. Tommy knows that the moment your enemy thinks they have won, their guard drops. That is the moment you strike with a lethality they never saw coming. He uses their disrespect as a cloak, hiding his true sovereignty behind a mask of utility. Machiavelli was a firm believer in the power of simulation and dissimulation. He wrote, "It is double pleasure to deceive the deceiver." He argued that while it is necessary to appear to have all the virtuous qualities, a prince must be prepared to act against them if the situation demands it. Machiavelli taught that the ability to play a role, to seem like a friend while being an enemy, or to seem weak while being strong, is essential for survival in a world of predators. In The Prince, he observes that the majority of men are so simple and so much the creatures of present necessities that the deceiver will always find someone who will let himself be deceived. By projecting an illusion of vulnerability, you are performing a diagnostic test on the people around you. Those who take the opportunity to disrespect you while you appear down are revealing their true character and their lack of strategic depth. You are not losing, you are auditing your enemies. The contrast here is between status and power. The common man is obsessed with status, the appearance of being important. The man of power, the Shelby, is obsessed with the result. He is willing to sacrifice his status in the short term, to be mocked, to be looked down upon, if it means he gains the ultimate power over the situation. The common man would rather lose the war than look weak for a second. The sovereign would rather look weak for a week and win the war in a day. Disrespect, in this context, becomes a resource. It is the fuel that blinds your opponent while you sharpen your blade in the shadows. In the modern zadrez of your career or social life, you apply this by playing the fool. If a rival or a disrespectful supervisor thinks you are just a worker or not a threat, let them keep that illusion. Do not correct them. Do not brag about your side projects or your long-term plans. In fact, ask them for advice on something you already understand. This feeds their ego and makes them feel even more superior. While they are busy basking in the glow of their own perceived brilliance, you are observing their process, finding the flaws in their department, and building the alliances that will eventually make them obsolete. When the reorganization or the promotion happens, and you are the one standing at the top, they will realize their mistake. They won't just regret the disrespect. They will be haunted by the fact that they gave you the very tools you used to dismantle them. You are the spider, and you've just convinced the fly that you are the one who is stuck in the web. Your reputation is not what people say about you when you are in the room. It is the psychological weight that remains when you leave it. Most men treat their reputation as an accident, a byproduct of their personality that they hope people will find likable. The strategist, however, treats reputation as a piece of high-level architecture. It is a structure designed to protect your interests and intimidate your enemies before a single word is ever exchanged. To make them regret disrespecting you, you must build a reputation that makes disrespect feel like a dangerous gamble. You must move through the world in a way that suggests that beneath your calm exterior lies a capacity for absolute resolution. To understand the power of a curated myth, we must return to the very beginning of the Shelby saga. Consider the scene where Thomas Shelby rides a black horse through the desolate, soot-stained streets of Small Heath. He does not say a word. He does not shout for attention. Yet, as he moves, the world around him freezes. Women pull their children inside. Men look away or lower their heads in a silent acknowledgement of his presence. He uses a monk to spread red powder, a superstitious ritual that adds a layer of the supernatural to his very real criminal authority. This wasn't just a man going for a ride. This was a coronation. Tommy was projecting an image of a man who operated on a different plane of existence than the masses who lived there. He understood that by creating a spectacle of quiet, disciplined power, he was setting the terms of every future interaction. By the time he actually had to confront a rival, half the battle was already won, because his reputation had already stripped them of their confidence. The internal psychology of the Small Heath procession is the mastery of social economy. Thomas Shelby knows that if he has to physically fight every person who considers disrespecting him, he will eventually run out of resources. Therefore, he invests heavily in his brand. He dresses with a precision that speaks of order in a world of chaos. He moves with a deliberate slowness that suggests he is never in a hurry because he is already the master of time. He creates a mythos around the peaky blinders that makes them seem larger than life. This is the architecture of the name. When you build a reputation for being cold, calculated, and absolute in your retributions, the world begins to self-regulate around you. People start to censor themselves in your presence. They think twice before making a joke at your expense. They treat your time as a precious commodity. This isn't because they like you. It's because the myth you've built has taught them that the cost of crossing you is too high to calculate. Niccolò Machiavelli, the architect of political sovereignty, devoted entire chapters of The Prince to the maintenance of a ruler's reputation. He famously posited the question, is it better to be loved than feared, or feared than loved? His answer was surgical. It may be answered that one should wish to be both, but because it is difficult to unite them in one person, it is much safer to be feared than loved. E.T. Machiavelli understood that love is a fickle emotion, a bond of obligation which, because men are wretched, is broken every time their own interests are served. Fear, however, is maintained by a dread of punishment which never fails. For the strategist, fear does not mean being a bully or a tyrant. It means being a man of high consequences. It means that people know that if they disrespect the boundary you have set, there will be a specific, unavoidable reaction. Machiavelli argued that a prince must avoid being hated, but he must never avoid being respected. A reputation for unwavering resolve is the ultimate shield against the masses who would otherwise see your kindness as a weakness to be exploited. The common man fails because he wants to be approachable. He wants everyone to think he's a good guy. In his quest for popularity, he dissolves his boundaries. He allows people to roast him, to be late for his meetings, and to dismiss his ideas, all under the guise of being easygoing. The man of power, the Shelby, recognizes that easygoing is just another word for irrelevant. The common man seeks to be loved and ends up being ignored. The sovereign seeks to be respected and ends up being followed. You must decide today which category you belong to. If you want to make them regret disrespecting you, you must stop trying to be the friend and start trying to be the standard. You must become the man whose presence demands a higher level of behavior from everyone in the room. In the modern landscape of the 21st century, your reputation is your digital and social footprint. It is the aesthetic of your life. To apply this lesson, you must conduct a sovereignty audit of your personal brand. Look at how you present yourself to the world, your clothing, your tone of voice, the way you carry your body, and even the way you respond to messages. Do you look like a man who can be insulted without consequence? If you are constantly available, constantly joking, and constantly seeking validation, you are building a reputation of low value. You must begin to cultivate an aesthetic of the untouchable. This means dressing with intent, even in casual settings. It means being highly selective with whom you spend your time. It means that when you do speak, your words are weighted with authority rather than fluff. You must build a small heath in your own life, a space where your name carries enough weight to silence the noise of the common man. When your reputation precedes you, disrespect becomes impossible, because no one wants to be the one to find out if the myth is true. We have traveled through the smoke of Birmingham and the cold logic of the Italian courts. We have dismantled the psychology of the common man and rebuilt the skeleton of the sovereign. But knowledge without execution is merely a hallucination of power. You now possess the blueprint. You know that silence is a vacuum, that aggression must be absolute, that the frame is the territory, and that your reputation is the architecture that holds it all together. But the world does not care what you know. It only cares what you can endure. Power is not a destination you reach. It is a cold, silent discipline that you practice every single day. Thomas Shelby did not become the man he was because of a single victory. He became that man because he refused to surrender his sovereignty to the chaos of the world, even when the world tried to break him. The synthesis of these lessons leads to one inescapable truth. The sovereign is the only person in the room who is truly free. Everyone else is reacting to their bosses, to their wives, to their insecurities, and to the opinions of the crowd. The common man is a puppet whose strings are pulled by the disrespect of others. The strategist, however, has cut those strings. He understands that the rein begins within. If you can control your pulse, if you can control your silence, and if you can control your response to the provocations of the mass, then you have already won the only war that matters. The respect of the world is simply the tax that the world pays to a man who has mastered himself. I am issuing you a final command. This is the reaction fast. For the next 24 hours, you will treat every interaction as a test of your sovereignty. No matter what is said to you, whether it is an insult, a provocation, or a dismissal, you will not react with emotion. You will not explain. You will not defend. You will use the 5-second rule of silence. You will observe the offender as if they are an interesting but ultimately irrelevant specimen. You will move slower. You will speak less. You will feel the tension rise in the other person as they realize their bait has no hook. In that tension, you will find your power. You will realize that by refusing to react, you have effectively made them irrelevant. The Shelby Company Limited does not ask for permission to exist, and it does not apologize for its success. You are the architect of your own regret or your own reign. The time for being the nice guy who finishes last is over. The time for the sovereign has begun. Take this blueprint and build your empire in the silence. Move with the ghost of the black horse behind you and the logic of the prince in your mind. The world is waiting to see who you really are. Make sure that when they find out, they never forget the cost of looking you in the eye.